Representative Nelson.
Hey, D.A. Belton. How you doing today?
Fine, thank you. How are you, sir?
Living the dream. I have, the best thing is having two committee meetings at the same time.
Yes.
But
thank
yeah,
you
no
for your
worries.
service, sir. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. So the first thing I'd ask is it common for the state to pause an investigation or prosecution during a federal investigation? I feel like all the, Armand Arbery, and you might have seen that we had a sheriff in St. Tammany Parish that had concurrent state and federal investigations. They get charges on both, and it's kind of gone at the same time. I've never seen DOJ say, don't press any charges on a state level on separate charges, even while they're pursuing these civil rights actions. Is that a normal thing? Has that ever happened to you before?
It's not uncommon. It's never happened to me before, but it's not uncommon for the federal government to ask a local district attorney not to proceed.
Mm-hmm. And then on October 14th, you texted Matthew Blocks, offering answering questions from the Black Caucus. Do you recall that?
If I texted him, I'm sure I did. Yes.
Welcome back. Yes, I still sound horrible because I'm recovering from COVID, but today is a good day. I sound really, really bad, but I can tell you that I feel so much better. I feel better. I'm not aching as much, and I'm still exhausted, and I still sound horrible, but I am grateful to be above ground. But I think I got about 15 minutes in me. That should be sufficient for what I need to explain John Belton's testimony on April 7th of this year. I have no expectation, no excitement. Wait, excitement might be the wrong word. But I have a little bit of brain fog. I'm blaming everything on COVID at this point. I have brain fog, but I have no excitement about what may or may not happen with the grand jury on November 10th based on what has happened over the past 3.5 years. I'm very cautious about that day, about anything at this point. But before we get started, I need to follow up with the question that I asked in the last video. The question was, did you notice anything strange about the body cam footage? And by the way, that was my, 14th video over the past 5 or 6 months about Ronald Greene, and it was the first time that I showed the footage. It was the first time, for reasons I won't get into, because as I stated, I think I got about 15 minutes with this voice. But the question that I asked was, did you notice anything peculiar about that footage? And of course, the footage is graphic. It shows the last moments of his life. But there was something else to note about that footage. If you go back and you look at it, there's 6 seconds that's missing from the timestamp. It skips. And there's 6 seconds that's missing. And I'm just curious as to what happened to those 6 seconds. Why are they missing? Who removed them? 9, 10, 16. You see that? 9, 10, 16. And because everything is happening so fast, it's easy to miss it. So just think of a counter: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16. It's like a millisecond. You'll miss it. If you don't watch it in slow motion, you will miss it. And I watched everything in slow motion because I didn't want to miss anything. And there are 6 seconds that are missing. There's a lot going on in the footage altogether if you watch it in slow motion. But I'm curious, mean, that's a question. It's not just curiosity. It's a question that needs to be answered. What happened on those 6 seconds? And who removed it? Who removed the 6 seconds? John Belton, the DA of Union in Lincoln Parish, has stated time and time again, I cannot promise an indictment, and we get it. But I have to be honest, it sounds like an eerie prediction sometimes. It sounds like a prediction. Because there were so many inconsistencies in John Belton's testimony. So many. When he was asked a tough question, he would say, well, I don't have my notes. But he had an iPad sitting in front of him that he had his hand on. And also, he had supplied the committee with the PowerPoint that they praised him for because it was so thorough. And he had an iPad sitting right there that he read from when he gave that nearly 8-minute opening statement. When Representative McGee asked him about the text messages, one of his excuses is, I don't have my notes.
Meeting.
Well, let me back up. Is that with the governor's staff, or I don't have my notes with me? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm trying to get, and I know I'm not trying to trick you or anything. I'm just trying to get the timeline
Right.
I can look on here too. And then on October 14th, you texted Matthew Blocks, offering answering questions from the Black Caucus. Do you recall that?
If I texted him, I'm sure I did. Yes.
Well, of course he did. And I understand that they have to communicate, but there were a lot of text messages back and forth between Matthew Block, who's on the executive staff of the governor's office, Governor John Bel Edwards. But I don't understand why John Belton, as a black man, would offer to answer questions for the governor's executive staff, for the governor, for Matthew Block, the questions of the Louisiana Black Caucus. He offered to jump in front of that and answer the questions for him, taking the heat off of them. I'll answer the questions for you guys. It appears as though there's been a lot of text messages, although he's trying to downplay that. There's a lot of texting that's been going on, and it seems like there's a lot of collaboration, in my opinion, that's been going on behind the scenes. 3.5 years now. 3.5 years.
Then on September 16, 2020, Matthew Blocks texted you and asked you if you had a moment to talk. Do you recall that?
What date was that?
That was September 16, 2020. I know this is hard. This is a 3-year investigation. I'm not trying to trick you.
I do recall that, yes.
And then that was that moment to talk in reference to the Ronald Greene matter?
I would assume, yes, because that's the only issue that we have that it's common.
And then October 5th, Block texts you again requesting to talk later that afternoon. That would also be about the Ronald Greene matter. Is that correct?
I would only assume so, yes.
And then October 7th, Blocks texts you again and says, if and when the governor decides to release the video, and then I'm not sure if maybe you texted Matthew that, and then I said, I greatly appreciate you, and the governor. That would be also about Ronald Greene, correct?
Yes.
Representative Nelson. Hey, DA Belton. How you doing today?
Fine, thank you. How are you, sir?
Living the dream. The best thing is having 2 committee meetings at the same time.
Yes.
But
thank you
no
for your
worries.
service, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So the first thing I'd ask is it common for the state to pause an investigation or prosecution during a federal investigation? I feel like all the, Armand Arbery, and you might have seen that we had a sheriff in St. Tammany Parish that had concurrent state and federal investigations. They get charges on both, and it's kind of gone at the same time. I've never seen DOJ say, don't press any charges on a state level on separate charges, even while they're pursuing these civil rights actions. Is that a normal thing? Has that ever happened to you before?
It's not uncommon. It's never happened to me before, but it's not uncommon for the federal government to ask a local district attorney not to proceed.
That was Representative Nelson asking him, is this normal? Because in the Ahmaud Arbery case, the state and fed case, They were happening at the same time. In fact, the state case concluded and they were convicted long before the federal hate case even, trial even started. So why couldn't we have both things happen at one time? And of course, he gave this, this answer that was expected. It's never happened to me, but it's not uncommon. 2019 was an election year for John Bel Edwards, and here we are in 2022. And this small town DA is running for Attorney General in the state of Louisiana. In Louisiana, my home state, I got a question for you. If he's not trusted in the DA's office in little small Union and Lincoln parishes, do you trust him in the Attorney General's office in Baton Rouge? It's just a question. The most telling part of this entire testimony from John Belton was when Representative Nelson questioned him. He asked him a solid question. Do you have anything in writing to support the feds requesting that you not initiate a state case? Do you have anything in writing? That was a solid question. John Belton answered a different question, a question that wasn't asked. It was so clever that you almost don't catch it. Oh, it was slick. It was worthy of applause. I wanted to stand up and clap because it was so smooth how he did that. The question was, do you have anything in writing to support the feds asking you not to initiate a state case? He asked him about the two attorneys that he stated asked him not to initiate a state case. It was question number 2. It was within the first maybe 90 seconds of his testimony. Question number 2 from Representative McGee. Who told you not to initiate a state case? He named the two attorneys that told him not to initiate a state case. Representative McGee followed up and asked him, do you have anything in writing from them? And he said, well, I don't have anything in writing from them, but I have my cell phone and I have the conversation that I had with Brandon Brown. And I said, oh my goodness. They asked you about 2 other attorneys that told you not to initiate a case. And you're talking about the current attorney that told you to go forward with one. That was so slick how he answered that question. Well, I don't have anything, but I have the text. I have my phone if you want to see that. No. We didn't ask you about text messages from Brandon Brown. We asked you, do you have anything from the previous 2 attorneys that told you not to? Not the attorney that a week before you were scheduled to testify told you to go ahead. That was slick. It was slick. The last few minutes of this episode, I want you to listen to Representative Nelson and John Belton. Just listen to that. Pay attention to the dates. September 9th, 2019, LSP said, we gave Belton the file. What do you want us to do? He has the file. And Belton said, well, I can't do anything. The feds told me to wait. So each agency is passing it off to the other. 3.5 years pass, and all we have right now is a grand jury on November 10th. After 3.5 years, a blind man can see. There's a lot going on. Multi-agency, in my opinion, collaborations. At the beginning of this episode, there was a quote that read, evil is unspectacular and human, and it shares our bed and it eats at our own table. And that's true.
Can they stop me? No. But I felt like it was in the best interest to seek justice. One reason is because you had state police that investigated state police. And so it was important for me to make sure the evidence that I received came from an independent agency. I'll give you some examples. So typically, city police department is normally investigated by either the sheriff or the state police. The parish sheriff's office is typically investigated by the state police if they ask them to come in. But there's no one to investigate state police. And so in this scenario, you had a state police officer who was a suspect, or a number of them. And so it was important for an independent investigation to be initiated. So therefore, I can get an independent review and independent facts moving forward, especially in light of some of the problems, and I won't go into the specifics, but some of the problems that Trooper Al Paxton and Trooper Scott Brown ran into in terms of what they wanted to present to me. I'll leave it at that. So
when they turned over the file, when they turned over the information to you, I guess, do they recommend that charges be brought, or is that how that works?
So they recommended to state police, as I understand it, to bring charges to the colonel, right? Mm-hmm. But they did not. We talked about charges, right? But at that point in time, we did not present to the grand jury or did not file a bill of information because I immediately involve the United States Department of Justice.
I think, similar to the questions we asked Colonel Davis, the timeline here just has become kind of ridiculous. At the end of the day, we're 3 years now, and presumably at least some of the troopers or whoever could be charges be brought against, they've just been essentially operating and working in state police this entire time. And state police has been here testifying to us this whole time that they didn't want to get involved or they didn't want to do anything because there was an ongoing criminal investigation. So they're kind of passing the buck to you. For whether it's your fault or not, they're passing the buck to you saying, hey, look, there's an ongoing criminal investigation. We turned everything over on, what is this, according to your timeline, September 9th, 2019. And so since September 9th, 2019, they've been saying the ball's in the district attorney's court. If he doesn't want to do anything, what are we supposed to do at state police? We turned over the evidence. And I understand they didn't turn over the Clary video. Obviously, that came up after. But even the video and the evidence that they did turn over was at least enough for the initial investigators to say, hey, this is wrong. And it was at least enough for you to say, as soon as you saw it, hey, this is wrong. We're going to turn over the federal investigators. So did any time in that, I guess the intervening 2 or 3 years, did it ever come to you that maybe this is something that we should pursue just because this seems like the feds are taking too long? Like, how did that, can you tell me what your thought process is in just holding off that long? If it was like 60 days, 60 days, I don't think anybody would be criticizing because we say we'll rather let it run.
So thank you for your question, Representative Nelson. I really appreciate that. Number one, let me say that I did take action. I took action immediately and involved the federal authorities because of their resources, because I thought it was in the best interest of the Greene family to bring them in to obtain justice for them. With respect to the timeline, I must agree with you that it has taken a long time. And my conversation with then U.S. Acting Attorney last summer, Alec Van Hook, I said, I'm ready to pursue these charges. It's been a long time. I've been waiting. I've been patient because I gave them my word. And I'm a man of my word. I gave them my word that I would wait until their investigation was complete so I can gather more information and not impede their investigation. And I gave my word to the Greene family to make sure that I would bring justice. And so I had to balance those two promises. And when I spoke to Acting U.S. Attorney Alan Van Hook last summer, he said, John, we're going to have indictments probably in September or October. Could you just please wait? You've waited this long. I said, sure. And then it became the goalposts moved. And let me add this. I am not throwing the U.S. Attorney's Office under the bus. They work well with my office. The acting U.S. Attorney at that time, Alan Van Hook, worked well with me. The new U.S. Attorney, Brandon Brown, is a fabulous person as well. And they work well with me, keep me informed of everything and what's going on for the most part. There's some things they can't share with me, but we have a very, very good working relationship. And so in November, I was told that there was a possibility that they would have an indictment in December. At that time, I called Ms. Mona Hardin and said, we're going to possibly get indictment in December. And I remember her response was something about the holidays and Christmas and stuff like that would be really nice. But it didn't happen. And so I got a call from U.S. Attorney Brandon Brown last week, and he shared with me that they've decided to allow me to move forward with the state charges. And I thanked him, and I immediately called Ms. Mona Harding on last Friday to let her know of that news.
And so my last question, I think they're going to cut me off. Do you have any kind of memo or email where that documents DOJ saying, we request you do not press charges or do not pursue anything? Do you have those actual documents?
No, I do not. But I have.
They exist.
If you want to look at my cell phone, because I know my text messages with Mr. Brown, I can share with. I didn't sanitize my phone.
Do us a favor and don't you smash it in your tailgate.
But I'll be glad to show you. I'll be glad to show you my text messages to Mr. Brown recently of this week. He indicated to me that he would get a letter to me on Friday. I'm sorry, he wrote the letter Friday. But that letter needed to be approved by Washington, D.C. before it was sent to me. I have that if you'd like to look at it.
Okay, yeah, I think that might be helpful.
Okay,
Thank
sure.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. Let me kind of go over some things with you. I want to. So, May 10th, 2019.
He did not answer that question. In the next episode, we're going to dive a little deeper into that whole performance. He's moving around like he's looking for his cell phone and knowing full well no one asked him about text messages from U.S. Attorney Brandon Brown. They asked him if he had any documentation from the previous attorneys, not Brandon Brown. That was a performance. It was clever, but it just didn't fool anybody. So it's a waiting game at this point, November 10th, 2022. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, my new channel. Hit the like button, share the content. Talk to you soon.